All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. It's Beer 30 here. Sometimes I record these in the morning, and it is now 5 o'clock, 4:42, close enough. So Beer 30, here we go. Cheers. This one, let me get. So this is one of my sailing news podcasts where I kind of go over some of the new sailing news. Sometimes I do Ask Me Anythings where I answer the questions from our patrons. You can join there and support the channel, patreon.com/sailingdoodles or sailingdoodles.podia.com, and I'll answer your question on the next one. But my first topic today I'm going to get to is Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have bought the Australian SailGP. I'm going to say that a lot, GPT, but I mean GP. I don't know. I can't make myself stop saying it. But anyway, SailGP. So if you don't know what SailGP is, it started in 2019. It's national teams racing these really high-tech foiling F-50 catamarans. I believe, oh gosh, how many are there? I'm not sure how many teams there are, but it's national teams. So America has one, Australia, New Zealand, a lot of the other countries, and then Spain and Italy and all those guys have their own team. And so Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have bought Australia's SailGP, and they have renamed it the BONDS Flying Roos. So BONDS is a men's underwear brand, the Flying Roos in Australia. So it makes sense that they would, but it's actually kind of interesting because they're the first sponsor team. So everybody else is the Team USA or Team England or UK, whatever. But now they're the Australia Bonds Flying Roos, which is kind of nice. So SailGP, I mean, these boats are super fast. They're foiling catamarans. They do 100 kilometers an hour, like they can do it, which is nearly 60 miles an hour. And so they're pretty amazing boats. They're really high tech, and they race all over the world. And they're really fun to watch online. I've watched them on YouTube all the time. You can find them there, and they're really entertaining races. And I believe they do. I can't remember how many days. I think it's at least a couple days of racing in each location. Like their last race, I believe, was it in New York recently? I believe it was the 7th through the 9th. So they do 3 days of racing, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was June 7th and 8th. That was the New York Grand Prix. So they do two days of racing, and I believe there's 3 or 4 races every day for those 2 days, and it's really entertaining. And then so they did New York, they did LA and San Francisco, and I believe they Sydney. They ship these boats all over the world, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So I'd recommend doing that if you get a chance. Just look it up online. You can look up their schedule, and then you can watch them on YouTube, I think, and they're a lot of fun to watch. But it is kind of nice that the sailing world is getting a little sports exposure. I mean, there've been races all for hundreds, as long as there's been sailboats, people have been racing them, and there have been some pretty notoriable, like I'll talk about it later. There's the Annapolis to Newport race, and the Vendée Globe, and there's some in Australia. You got the Hobart Sydney race and all these things, and they got the Transpac and Transatlantic and all that stuff. They have these races. They're then they have the what is it, the Bermuda, and then they have the Caribbean 1500 and all these races. But most of them haven't been televised. It's kind of hard to televise like the Annapolis to Newport race because it's 475 miles. And I mean, how do you film that, right? It's kind of hard to do. But these SailGPs are on these closed courses, kind of inshore racing. And so, with drones and helicopters, and then they got, stands with high-tech cameras, and then they can put the graphics on the screen, how fast they're going and who's got the right of way. And it really gives the casual viewer a lot of information that they can understand what's actually going on. So it's interesting that Ryan Reynolds is in this. So Hugh Jackman is Australian, so he's obviously kind of has some interest there. Ryan Reynolds, I believe he's Canadian, but he's been very into the guy is a pretty genius businessman. So if you don't know, he actually bought the Wrexham football soccer team in England, and he bought it with I forget his name, but he was on I can't think of his name. Anyway, he was on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, funny guy. But he bought that football team for £2 million, so $2.5 million, and he bought it in 2020, early 2021, so $2.5 million, and Rob McElhenney, right? So that's his name, and it's amazing. So the guy, I mean, it was a big risk, right? Because the team was in one of the lower leagues, it wasn't making money. So if you don't know the way a British football works, is you have these leagues. So if you win your league, you get to move up to the next higher league, and the money's better, and the pay's better, and the exposure's better. But if you finish like last in your league, then you get relegated down to the lower league, so you got to get replaced, right? So I kind of like that. I kind of like how they do the relegation, because that'd be like an NBA or an MLB or an NFL team if they just suck. If they which happens, right? So, like, say, it's halfway through the season, there's no way they're making the playoffs. Halftime, they just kind of start selling all the parts and tanking so that they can get a good draft pick. And then, so they'll trade their star player to get draft picks and all this stuff. And so it's not fun to watch the rest of the season, because they have no incentive not to finish last place, right? I mean, other than not making money by selling tickets, right? But the relegation stuff, like, if I don't know, my team, the Texas Rangers, if they like, screw it, we're halfway through the season, there's no way we're making the playoffs, let's just sell everything and get trade picks for next year. Well, if they do that and finish last, then they get kicked down to the AAA ball, and they lose all their money, and they lose all their star players and stuff like that. So I really like the fact that they do the relegation stuff. But what's really amazing is that the last 3 years in a row, so they bought it in 21, and the 2022-2023 season, they won their league and got promoted from the National League to League Two. And then the next year, they won League Two, going up to League One. And then this year, they won League One, or they got promoted. I don't know if I think they won, whatever. And now they're going to the Champions League, which is like, I think there's the Champion League and then the Premier League. And the Premier League is the top. So pretty amazing that they've had that much success. I'm sure they spent a lot of money on it, because if you're one of the lower tier teams, you got to spend money on players in order to be better and move up, but then you're not going to make money on it. So it's kind of a gamble. If you buy this nice player and then you don't move up, well, then you just wasted a lot of money. So it was a risk there. But now, they are worth an estimated 150 million pounds, about $200 million. So on a $2 million investment, $2.5 million investment, they've made 200 million. That's what it's worth, plus then all the other stuff. So pretty amazing he's done that. And then, he's also the guy. I mean, so he's done that. He also started Mint Mobile, I believe is Mint Mobile, or is it? I think it's Mint. Just a mobile phone company. And he, him being a famous guy, he doesn't have to pay for a spokesman. He just gets on there and talks about his thing. And he also started Aviation Gin and gets to promote that. I mean, these celebrities, like The Rock, arguably is worth, way more money, because he's got his tequila and his other brands and all that stuff, than he makes doing film. And it's kind of interesting, you've seen a lot of these celebrities using their celebrity status to promote their businesses. So, the guy, I don't know how much, Ryan Reynolds has made doing all this stuff, but he's made a couple $100 million, or he's got to split it with Rob McElhenney. But he's still $100 million there, $100 million on. He's making hundreds of millions of dollars a year with not even being in a movie. And then I don't know how much he got paid for Deadpool and all that stuff, but I'm sure it was a hefty check. So pretty amazing stuff there. It's hopefully that'll be good for SailGP. That they're going to get. So this is already a buzz in the news, right? Hollywood is, and it's on all the news shows that he's bought it, so it's promoting it. And I think it could be good for the sailing community in general to get more exposure to something like SailGP and get people more interested. And I'm pretty happy about that, being a sailor myself. And then moving on, I slightly related thing, because it's another sailing race. So the revival of the Admiral's Cup. So the Admiral Cup was founded in 1957 by the Royal Ocean Racing Club in England, and they would do 2 and 3 boat challenges. So some would be inshore and you're using a smaller boat, some would be offshore and you're using a bigger boat. They have a bunch of different classes. They originally had 19 countries, so it was like Team USA, whatever, England, all that stuff. And it kind of fizzled out over the next, it did well for a while, but then basically, when it was canceled in 2001, came back for 1 year in 2023. It happens every other year. And then it hasn't happened since. So they just started this year, and it starts on July 19th of this year. Pretty cool. And they're only doing a 2-boat format. So instead of 3, which they originally had, they're going to have 2 classes, like a 44 to 56 foot boat, and then a 36 to 44 foot boat. And they race under different handicaps. So the way these handicaps worked is, they have. So like I was in a regatta in Indonesia, and they would start us off with a handicap based on the boat, right? Because some boats are just naturally faster because of waterline or weight and all that. They're naturally faster than other boats. So you get a handicap on that. I was also in a regatta in St. Martin, which was a lot of fun. But I remember like so I'll just talk about the same. I mean, the Indonesian one was a lot of fun. I put a video on YouTube about it. It was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite ones. But we did the St. Martin regatta too. It's where we broke our mast. We made a video about that too. We call it the Massacre. Um, but so like the first day we were on a Beneteau 40 or 45, I don't remember, pretty new one. And we just didn't have our shit together the first day. Like we did terrible. And so then we got a pretty good handicap. So then the next day, I think we finished in our class like top 3 or something, but with our handicap, we won it the next day. And we were on track the next day. It was a 4-day race, I believe. And we were on track the next day to do it again, win our class again that day, and the mast broke. And yeah, so we had to retire. Luckily, nobody was hurt. I made a video about it. I'll put it in the link in the description there. So anyway, that's how the handicapping goes. And so this will be a handicap race. And I'm hoping it's televised. We'll see here. But it's kind of cool that a lot of these sailboat races are coming back, and being, kind of propping up the sailing sport here. And there's another one that just happened. Oh, and so let me continue on with the Admiral's Cup. So they're doing in a women's inclusion rule. So each team has to have at least one woman on it. And then each boat, each team, each crew must have at least one woman and one young sailor under 25. So it's kind of cool, like, getting women and kids involved. Maybe it'll be better for the sport overall. People will start watching a little more and get other people. Because sailing is one of those sports where you don't really have to be physical, right? I mean, there's certain jobs. If you're a grinder on a winch, yeah, you can probably need that. But if you're the tactician or the captain or the helms person, you don't need the physical strength, right? So like it can be done by anyone. Some of the women they're quoted in the stories say they are happy about that, but they want to be picked because of their skill, not just because they're a woman. But it's a first step there. And so that's with the Admirals. What do they call that? The Admirals Cup. And then another race that just happened was, when I mentioned earlier, is the Annapolis to Newport race. I believe it's every other year. So it goes from Annapolis, 475 miles down through. It's first 120 are in the Chesapeake, and then you go offshore around Block Island to Newport. And it's kind of an interesting race. They say it's like 2 or 3 races in one, because you have the Chesapeake where the winds are notoriously fickle, and and they were this year. So on Friday when the race started, there was 5 to 7 knots of breeze, and like so at one point there was down 2.5 knots of breeze, and so the boats are just barely making headway. They need, because there's currents come in and out and the wind's shifting, and you never know. And so like that's one race. And then once you get offshore, from there to Block Island, you're kind of going straight up the coast, and then you turn into Newport. That's like the third leg, they call it. And so this year, yeah, so the team that won it this year was the, oh gosh, what is it? Temptation Oak Cliff. They did it in 66 hours or 61 hours. It took them, they were saying they were only doing 2.5 knots of wind at one point coming through the Chesapeake. And so, it's pretty amazing. They made it all the way through. And then what they did, how they really won the race, is most other boats kind of did what they call a rum line, which all the boats in the race, they went straight, left the Chesapeake, turned north, and went straight to the rum line to Block Island, and then whatever. So they're going the shortest route. Well, Temptation Oak Cliff went offshore a good ways off that. I think maybe 20 miles. Let's see, it says at one place 20 plus miles east of the rum line. And so they were 20 miles further east than the rest of the boat, so they had to get out there. So it cost them some time to get out there, but the winds were much stronger out there, 25 to 27 knots, and so they could go at a much higher speed. But when you're looking at 300 plus miles, yeah, it might take an extra 5 miles to get out there, because you're going at an angle to get out there, so it's probably you're going an extra 5 miles distance. But if you can do an extra 2 knots, well, you make up for that in 2 hours, in 2.5 hours. And then the rest of the 20, 30, 40 hours to get up there, you're just lapping the fleet. And what's kind of interesting is when they rounded Block Island, kind of turning downwind, their forestay broke, their headstay broke. So they couldn't put out a headsail. So then they were down to their mainsail. And so that was the last 30 miles. and they were down to their mainsail and a staysail because they did have a stay up there. They were lucky they had a staysail on there because like if you know if that was the only thing holding the mast up, so they kind of limped in. But I think it said it took them the last what they did I don't know, the last 30 miles, last 10 miles took like 3 hours because they were going so slow. But pretty interesting. It's a fun race. I'd love to do something like that at some time. I've actually been I was at I was down in like the USVI and the BVI when they have their regattas. So they had the BVI and the USVI regattas, and a lot of fun. I wanted to get on like a pro race boat to film it and everything, but those guys are so professional and race conscious that they even they didn't want my extra weight. It'd be 200 pounds with me and my gear. So I mean, because that they want to win. So I don't know. I would love to get on something like that and film it one day, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get in my own regatta someday and put it on my boat, do another sailboat race. But it's different doing on because like I've done several of the regattas and races where you're on a production boat like a Beneteau. So the two races that I've been in, to two regattas I've been in. I was on a Beneteau 50 and another one I was on a Beneteau 45. But it's a different story when you're on like an actual dedicated race boat. Those boats are flying. They're doing at least wind speed. Most of the times they're doing more than wind speed, and they're just flying, and it's a whole different ball game. So I would love to do one of those days. Maybe I'll make that happen. But all right, so that is the sailing news for the day. Just wanted to give you an update on what's going on, and it looks like the sailing's being put in the mainstream, which is good for everybody in the sailing and cruising industry. Brings more attention to the sport and then the lifestyle, which I think is good for everybody too. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and I really appreciate it. And I'll be doing another Ask Me Anything real soon. If you would like to have your questions asked, you can ask me anything and I'll answer it, as long as it doesn't get me in jail or something. And we'll do it on the next one. So join the patreon.com/sailingdoodles or go to sailingdoodles.podia.com, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.